Have you ever met someone at the exact moment your life was falling apart and realized later they were never supposed to be a stranger? Tonight, I'm going to tell you the incredible story of Sophia Monroe, a young woman who ran barefoot through the streets of Chicago, trying to escape the man she once called her husband, a decorated police officer hiding a monster inside. But fate had other plans. Soaked in rain and fear, she ducked under the coat of a tall, quiet man, not knowing he was Luca Romano, one of the most feared mafia bosses in the city. In that single moment, two broken worlds collided: her desperation, his silence, her need for safety, his need for redemption. What happened next is a story about danger, trust, and a love that began in fear, but ended in peace. This is the story of the woman who found her freedom under a stranger's coat, and the mafia boss who found his humanity protecting her. Rain poured down like the city itself was trying to wash away its sins. Chicago's streets gleamed silver and black, traffic lights bleeding red across puddles. Sophia Monroe ran barefoot through the storm, her coat clutched around her torn blouse, breath ragged, heart pounding. Behind her, she could still hear him, his voice cutting through the thunder like a curse. "Sophia!" Carl's voice, her husband. She turned a corner sharply, almost slipping on the wet pavement. The bruise along her cheekbone throbbed where his hand had connected hours ago. The memory replayed in flashes: his rage, the shattering glass, the way he had grabbed her hair and whispered that she'd never escape him. For years she hadn't, but tonight, something inside her had finally broken free. She didn't have a plan, only one desperate goal: get away. Her lungs burned as she darted into a narrow street between tall buildings. Thunder cracked again. A car splashed by, soaking her to the knees. The city was alive with sound and rain and neon, but all she could hear was her pulse. Her phone was gone, her purse ripped from her hands when she fled the apartment. Then she saw him. A man stood under the awning of a closed coffee shop. Tall, still, a dark silhouette against the flickering sign above him. He wore a black coat that looked expensive, his hands in his pockets, face angled slightly downward as if he were listening to the rain. There was something about the stillness, like the storm itself bent around him. Sophia's mind screamed that she should keep running, but her body was already moving toward him. She had seconds before Carl turned that corner. "Please," she gasped, stumbling to him. Her voice shook, breathless and raw. "Please help me. Don't let him see me." Before he could respond, she pressed herself under his coat, slipping into the space between his body and the wall. The fabric smelled of rain and something rich, cedar and smoke. She hid her face against his chest, trembling uncontrollably. For a heartbeat, the world went completely silent. Then she felt it, a firm arm coming around her back, drawing her closer. The man didn't ask questions. He simply shifted his stance, pulling his coat wider so it enveloped her completely. Footsteps echoed down the alley. Carl's. The stranger straightened, his grip tightening subtly around her waist. Sophia could feel the tension in his muscles, the steadiness in his breathing. Through the pounding rain, she saw Carl's reflection flicker past the glass window. The man's body blocked her completely. Carl slowed, scanning the street, cursing under his breath. He was close enough that Sophia could smell the whiskey on his breath even from behind the coat. "Did you see a woman come this way?" Carl demanded. His voice was sharp, authoritative, cop voice. The stranger's reply was smooth, deep, and calm. "No one came this way." Carl hesitated, squinting. "You sure?" The man tilted his head slightly, just enough for the light to catch his eyes. Cold, commanding blue. Positive. Something in his tone carried weight, the kind that made even an angry man think twice. Carl muttered something and turned away, disappearing into the storm. Sophia didn't breathe until the footsteps faded. Her knees gave out, and the stranger's arm caught her easily. He steadied her, his hand surprisingly gentle against her arm. "It's over," he said quietly. "You're safe now." She looked up for the first time. His face was striking, sharp jawline, short dark hair slick with rain, a few days' stubble lining his jaw. His eyes, even in the dim light, were the clearest shade of blue she had ever seen, and they were studying her, not with judgment, but with curiosity. She swallowed hard. "Thank you," I didn't mean to. He shook his head. Don't apologize. He shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. You're freezing. She blinked at him, shivering as the warmth of the fabric enveloped her. I just needed to hide, she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. He watched her for a long moment, as if weighing something in his mind. You're bleeding. Her gaze followed his to the cut on her arm. She hadn't even felt it through the adrenaline. It's nothing, she said, but her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Come on, he said finally, turning toward a black car parked across the street. You can't stay out here. I can't, she stammered. If my husband finds me. He opened the car door and looked back at her. He won't. Not tonight. The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. Against every instinct screaming that she didn't know him, Sophia followed. She slid into the passenger seat, clutching his coat tighter around herself. The car's interior smelled like leather and rain. He got in beside her, the quiet hum of the engine cutting through the storm. She stared at his hands on the steering wheel, strong, deliberate, steady. Where are we going? She asked softly. Somewhere he won't find you. She hesitated. Why are you helping me? He glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. Because you asked. The simplicity of it made her throat ache. She turned to the window, watching the city lights blur past as they drove through the rain. Her mind screamed to ask more, to demand who he was, what he wanted, but exhaustion won. Her eyes fluttered shut. When she woke again, the car had stopped. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. They were outside a tall glass building, the kind that screamed wealth. The man got out first, opened her door, and offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His hand was warm despite the cold. Where are we? She whispered. My building, he said simply. You'll be safe here. She followed him through the marble lobby, too numb to protest. The security guard nodded as they passed, no questions asked. The elevator ride was silent, only the sound of her heartbeat filling her ears. When the doors opened, she stepped into an apartment that felt more like a fortress, sleek, minimalist, glass and steel, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. He motioned toward a couch. Sit, I'll get something for that cut. She sat down gingerly, still wrapped in his coat. The city below looked endless. What's your name? She asked quietly. He paused, turning to her with a faint, almost ironic smile. Luca. The name felt heavy, familiar in a way she couldn't place. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Luca. He crouched beside her, pressing a small towel to her arm. His hands were careful, precise. You don't have to thank me, he said. You just have to rest. And for the first time in years, Sophia felt like maybe, just maybe, she could. He rose and disappeared into another room, returning a minute later with a first aid kit and a folded gray blanket. Here, he said simply. You're shaking. Sophia accepted the blanket, clutching it tightly as he sat across from her, opening antiseptic wipes and bandages with a precision that suggested long practice. His movements were calm, methodical, like someone used to patching wounds, not paper cuts, but real ones. Hold still. The sting of alcohol made her flinch, and his eyes flicked up immediately. Easy, he murmured. I won't hurt you. That quiet assurance said in that low voice broke something inside her. She blinked rapidly, willing the tears not to come. I'm sorry, she whispered, embarrassed by her own trembling. You don't have to be. He wrapped the bandage around her arm, his hand steady, his touch light. You live close? He asked after a pause. Not anymore, she said bitterly. I left. He didn't press. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy with the kind of understanding two people share when they both know pain, but don't want to name it. After a moment, Luca leaned back. You can use the guest room. Shower, sleep. No one will bother you. Sophia looked around at the vast, immaculate apartment. You live here alone? A faint smile. Alone enough. He stood, walked toward a small bar tucked near the windows, and poured himself a glass of something amber. You should eat, he said without turning. There's food in the kitchen. She didn't move. Why are you being kind to me? He turned then, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the glass. Because you needed it, he said simply. There was no smile now, no softness, only a quiet sincerity that unnerved her. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had helped her, without wanting something in return. When he disappeared into what she assumed was a study, she finally stood and wandered to the tall windows. The city glittered below like scattered jewels. Her reflection looked fragile, pale, eyes red, hair damp and tangled. She didn't recognize herself anymore. A faint noise made her turn. Luca had returned, holding out a folded white shirt and black sweatpants. "You'll drown in them," he said, "but they're clean." She managed a weak laugh. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted softly. "But I want to." There was no argument left in her. She took the clothes and went to the guest room. The hot shower burned her skin, washing away the night's dirt, but not the memories. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Carl's face, the rage twisting it, the promise he'd made. "You'll never leave me alive." When she emerged, the apartment was quiet. Luca was nowhere in sight. She sat on the edge of the bed, his oversized shirt hanging loose on her shoulders. The faint scent of his cologne, wood smoke, and leather clung to the fabric. She told herself to sleep, to run in the morning, to find a way to disappear. But exhaustion pulled her under before she could decide. Sunlight found her through the half-open curtains. For a second, waking felt like safety. Then she remembered everything. She sat up fast, scanning the room. Her clothes were neatly folded on a chair, dry and clean. A tray rested on the nightstand. Coffee, toast, fruit. She stepped into the living room cautiously. Luca stood by the window, a phone to his ear. His tone clipped but calm. "No, keep it quiet," he said. "If anyone asks, she's family. That's all they need to know." When he hung up and turned, his expression softened. "You should eat." Sophia hesitated. "You called someone about me." "I told my staff you're under my protection," he said simply. "Protection?" she repeated. He shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." Something about the word protection made her chest tighten. She wanted to thank him, but gratitude felt too small for what he'd done. Instead, she sat down at the table and picked at the fruit. He watched her for a moment, then said, "You don't have to tell me who he is. But whoever hurt you, he won't come near this building." Her fork froze midair. "You don't know that." He met her eyes, his calm almost frightening. "I do." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, she whispered, "He's a cop. He'll find me." For the first time, Luca's jaw tightened. "Then I'll make sure he wishes he hadn't." The way he said it, quiet, final, sent a chill through her. She realized she knew nothing about this man. "Who are you?" she asked. He looked at her for a long beat, then set his glass down. "Luca Romano." She blinked. The name sounded familiar, heavy. It took a second to place it. Then she remembered headlines she'd skimmed years ago. Rumors, speculation, whispers about a powerful family that controlled half of Chicago's underworld. "You," her voice faltered. "You're that Luca Romano?" He didn't deny it. Sophia's breath hitched. The coat, the silence, the way the security guard hadn't even looked at her. It all made sudden, terrifying sense. "Oh my God." She pushed back from the table. "I can't be here." He didn't move, just watched her panic. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere," she said. "Away from this." "Back to him?" The question hit like a slap. "No." "Then stay," he said, his voice low. "At least until you figure out what away looks like." She hesitated. "You expect me to trust a man people call a criminal?" He leaned forward slightly. "Do I look like your husband?" The air between them stilled. The answer was obvious. Her pulse slowed. She exhaled shakily. "No," she said. "You don't? Then start there," he said. He rose, slipped on his jacket, and nodded toward the door. "I'll be gone a few hours. There's food, clothes, anything you need. Don't open the door for anyone." When he was gone, the silence pressed in. Sophia sank into the couch, staring out at the skyline. Somewhere out there, Carl was probably tearing the city apart to find her. She should run while she still could. But instead, she pulled his coat tighter around her and whispered to no one. Just one more day. The hours crept by slowly. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the rain thinned into a cold, gray drizzle. Sophia tried to distract herself. She made coffee, wandered through the vast apartment, folded and refolded the blanket. But nothing quieted the restless fear crawling under her skin. Every creak of the building made her heart jump. She stopped at the bookshelf along the far wall. Rows of first editions, neat and precise. A framed photo sat among them. Luca, younger, standing beside a dark-haired man who looked enough like him to be family. Both were smiling, but there was something restrained about Luca's grin, as if even then he was holding something back. Beneath the photo was a small silver urn. The sight of it made her chest tighten. Whoever that man was, he mattered. The elevator chimed. Sophia froze. A keycard swipe. The soft roll of wheels on marble. For one sharp second she thought it was Carl, that he had found her. She grabbed the first thing within reach, a heavy crystal decanter, and held it up like a weapon. Then Luca's voice. Easy. Her shoulders sagged with relief. He was standing there, hands raised slightly. His suit was still immaculate, though there were faint drops of rain on his collar. "If you're going to hit me," he said, almost amused, "aim for the left side. It's already broken." Sophia set the decanter down, her hands trembling. "Don't do that. Don't just appear." He gave a small nod. Noted. He walked past her to the bar, poured himself a drink, and sank into the leather chair by the window. The silence stretched. Finally, she said, "Who was he?" "In the picture." Luca's jaw flexed. "My brother." A pause. "He died 6 years ago." "I'm sorry." He glanced at her, as if weighing whether she meant it, then nodded once. "Me too." Sophia hesitated, then asked, "Was it your world?" He didn't answer directly. He wanted out. I didn't stop him soon enough. His gaze drifted toward the skyline. In this city, there are only two kinds of people. Those who own the fear and those who live inside it. She shivered. "And which one are you?" Luca looked at her fully now, his eyes like a storm caught in glass. "I used to think I owned it." He stood, crossing to the kitchen. "You should eat. You look like you haven't slept in days." "I can't," she said quietly. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. The husband." Sophia nodded. Luca leaned against the counter. "You could press charges." She laughed bitterly. "He is the police." That drew silence. Then, softly, Luca said, "Then we do it another way." Something in his tone sent a chill down her spine. "What way?" He set his glass down, eyes unreadable. "You let me handle it." She stared at him, searching his face. "You mean, kill him?" He didn't reply, which was answer enough. "No," she said quickly. "No, I don't want that. I just want to be free." He stepped closer, stopping when she flinched. "Freedom doesn't come by asking nicely, Sophia. It's not your decision." "Then make one," he said quietly. "Run if you want, but he'll find you again. He'll keep finding you until someone stops him." Her throat worked. "And that someone is you? I keep my promises." The certainty in his voice frightened her almost as much as Carl's temper. But beneath it was something else, a conviction that sounded almost like faith. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to me?" He exhaled slowly. "Because when you ran into me last night, you didn't scream." That confused her. "What does that mean?" "Most people do," he said, and walked away before she could reply. That night, sleep came in fragments. She dreamt of shadows and rain, of running down endless streets. She woke to thunder again, her heart pounding. The city lights flickered across the room. From the living area came a faint sound, Luca's voice low and sharp. He was on the phone. "No, Dante, no one touches her. I don't care what he did in uniform." He breathes another threat. He disappears. Quietly. Sophia sat frozen. No one touches her. The words echoed through her mind. She should have felt safe, but instead, she felt a dangerous pull, a warmth that terrified her more than the threat itself. She lay back down, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening as his footsteps passed the doorway. For a long moment, he stood there watching her. Then the soft click of the door, and he was gone. Morning brought a fragile calm. The city buzzed below, horns and chatter like distant waves. Luca was gone again. but he'd left a note on the counter in bold, careful handwriting. "Stay inside. Someone will bring you breakfast. Don't open the door." Ella knock came an hour later. She almost ignored it, then peeked through the small camera screen by the door. A young woman stood outside holding a paper bag. Brunette, neat, polite smile. Sophia hesitated, then opened the door. "You must be Sophia," the woman said softly. "I'm Elena. I work for Mr. Romano." Sophia blinked. "You know about me?" Elena smiled faintly. "He doesn't let many people know things. But he trusts me." She handed over the bag. "There's coffee and pastries. And this." Inside was a phone. A brand new one. Elena's tone was gentle but firm. "He said if you ever need him, call that number. Only that number." Sophia turned the device over in her hand. "He doesn't even know me." Elena's smile deepened. "That's exactly why he's helping you. He doesn't know how to stop." That afternoon, Sophia wandered again. The air inside the penthouse was still, the city hummed below a dull heartbeat. She found herself by the piano in the corner, an antique Steinway, dustless and perfectly tuned. She ran her fingers across the keys. One note echoed, then another, soft, tentative, until the melody began to form, a tune she hadn't played since she was 16. She didn't hear Luca return until the final chord faded. He stood in the doorway watching her, rain dripping from his coat. For a moment, neither spoke. "I didn't know you played," he said. She startled, embarrassed. "Sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It's fine," he interrupted. "It's nice." He walked closer, leaving wet footprints on the floor. "What's it called?" "Clair de Lune. My mother used to play it." He nodded slowly. "She taught you?" She tried. Sophia smiled faintly. "I wasn't very good at lessons." Luca's eyes softened. "You're better than you think." The compliment felt strange coming from him, unexpectedly gentle. He hung up his coat and sat on the couch, elbows resting on his knees. "You look less afraid today." "I'm trying not to be," she said. "Keep trying." For a moment, the sound of the rain filled the silence between them. Then he said quietly, "I met with someone this morning. Your husband filed a missing person report." Her blood ran cold. "He's looking for me. He's looking for both of us now." Her gaze shot up. "What do you mean?" "He knows you were with a man. There are cameras outside that cafe." His voice stayed calm, but his jaw was tight. "That means he knows my name." Sophia gripped the edge of the piano. "So now what?" "Now," Luca said, "I make sure he never uses it again." He turned from her and walked toward the window. The skyline lay beneath them, gray and endless, the lake beyond it glimmering like cold steel. When he spoke again, his voice was steady, as if he had already decided something. "He'll keep coming until he believes you're gone. So I'll make him believe that." Sophia frowned. "You can't. What does that even mean?" Luca faced her. "It means that by the time I'm done, the only thing left of your husband's reach will be his badge and his pride. Both will be useless." She shook her head. "You can't just destroy people." "I don't destroy people," he said. "I remove threats." The calmness in those 3 words chilled her. He took a step closer, and the light caught the faint scar along his jaw. "Don't look at me like that," he said quietly. "You came to me to be safe. Let me make you safe." She wanted to argue, but her voice wouldn't come. Instead, she whispered, "I don't want more violence." For a heartbeat, his expression softened. "Neither do I." He looked away again. "But sometimes the only way to end it is to finish it." That night the rain returned. It tapped the windows in steady rhythm while the city pulsed with blue and red lights far below. Sophia couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Carl's face, but now another image intruded. Luca, silent, watching the storm as if it belonged to him. She rose, wrapping herself in the blanket, and stepped into the living room. He was still awake, of course, sitting on the couch with a glass of water in his hand, tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The lines around his eyes looked deeper in the dim light. "You should be in bed," he said without looking up. "So should you." He smiled faintly at the retort. "Touché." Sophia hesitated near the piano. "You said you lost your brother. What happened?" For a long moment, only the rain answered. Then he said, he tried to get out, wanted to build something clean. I told him I'd follow, but I didn't. He was shot 6 months later. I'm sorry. Don't be. He made his choice. I made mine. She crossed to the window, standing beside him. You really think people can't change? He turned his head toward her. You changed? Yes. She looked down at the street. I left. That's not change, he said softly. That's courage. The compliment caught her off guard. You talk like you've seen it all. I've seen enough to know courage when I see it. Their eyes met. The air between them felt fragile and alive, charged with something she didn't want to name. He reached out, brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. You can stay as long as you need, he said. Thank you. Don't thank me. His voice lowered. I'm not the good man you think I am. I don't think you're good, she said quietly. I just think you care. That silenced him. He looked away, as if the words had hit somewhere he didn't expect. By morning, the decision he'd spoken of was already in motion. Luca met Dante in the garage, his oldest friend and lieutenant. 2 men outside her husband's precinct, Luca said. Nothing loud. I just want eyes. Dante frowned. You sure about this? She's not like the others. If she finds out, she won't, Luca cut in. And if she does, she'll understand. Dante studied him. You're changing, boss. Luca didn't answer. He just looked at the storm drain where last night's rain still pooled, reflecting his face back at him. Maybe that's the point. Sophia spent the day pacing the apartment, restless. She needed to do something, anything, to feel like herself again. When she finally found a small sketchbook and pencils near the bookshelf, she sat by the window and began to draw. At first her hands shook, but slowly the line steadied. By the time the sun dipped behind the buildings, a faint smile touched her lips. On the paper was the outline of Luca's window view. The city lights, the lake, the storm clouds breaking. She didn't hear him come in. That's good, he said from behind her. She startled, then relaxed. You shouldn't sneak up on people. I wasn't sneaking. He leaned down to see. You made it look peaceful. Maybe I just wanted to see it that way. He looked at her, the corner of his mouth twitching. You think I could ever be peaceful? You could try. Wouldn't suit me. It might surprise you, she said. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. He set a small box on the table. What's this? She asked. New passport, he said. New name, if you want to leave the country. Her breath caught. You did this? You said you wanted freedom. I'm giving it to you. She opened the box. Inside lay a passport, crisp bills, a phone. The name read Sophie Lane. Her hands trembled. You could get in trouble for this. I've been in trouble my whole life, he said. At least this time it's for something that matters. She looked up at him. Why are you doing this for me? He met her eyes. Because the night you ran under my coat, I realized what it looks like when someone still believes they deserve to live. Later, as dusk bled into night, Luca's phone buzzed. He listened for a few seconds, face tightening. When he hung up, he turned toward her. Your husband's on the move. He's asking about me through people he shouldn't. Sophia's stomach nodded. You said you'd make him stop. Without killing him. I will. How? He didn't answer. He just grabbed his coat. She caught his arm. Luca, please. Don't become what he is. He paused. For a second, she saw the conflict flicker in his eyes. Then he said quietly, sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to remind him he's not the only one. He walked out before she could stop him. He found Carl Monroe outside a downtown bar, the kind that hid cops who didn't want to be seen drinking. Luca stepped out of the shadows as Carl lit a cigarette. The detective froze, hand going instinctively toward his weapon, but Luca was faster, just one step closer, a quiet command in his posture. I know what you've done, Luca said. And I know what you'll do if I let you. Carl sneered. You think you can scare me? I'm the law. You're the reason she's afraid of every sound in her own house. Carl laughed, but it was thin. She's mine. Luca's eyes went cold. Not anymore. He stepped forward, lowered his voice. You're going to sign the papers, You're going to walk away. You're going to forget she ever existed. And if I don't? Luca leaned close enough that Carl could smell the rain on his coat. Then every man in this city will know what kind of cop you are. What you do behind closed doors. Carl's face blanched. You can't prove— I don't need proof, Luca said. I just need people to believe. The silence that followed was enough. Carl's hand trembled around the cigarette. You're insane. No, Luca said. Just thorough. He turned and walked away, leaving the detective staring after him, the ember of his cigarette dying in the rain. When Luca returned hours later, Sophia was sitting by the window, wide awake. She rose the moment he entered. Where were you? He removed his coat, eyes weary. Handling it. Luca? He won't bother you again, he said simply. She searched his face. Did you hurt him? No, he said, but he'll wish I had. The tension in his shoulders eased only when she stepped forward and took his hand. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he murmured. I did. For the first time since she'd met him, his voice trembled, not from anger, but from something dangerously close to tenderness. They stood like that for a long time, hands linked in the hush of the high room, the city breathing below them. Sophia felt the tremor leave his fingers slowly, like a fever breaking. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she wasn't bracing for the next blow. She could simply stand. In the morning, the world tried to return to ordinary. She made coffee that was too strong and burned the toast. He pretended not to notice and ate it anyway. She asked if he had always lived here. He told her he hated the height, but liked the quiet. She washed the dishes, sleeves rolled up, and caught him watching her with a puzzled expression, as if the sight of someone at his sink felt more dangerous than any gun. He left mid-morning with a stack of papers tucked beneath his arm. I'll be back before dark, he said. You're safe here. Elena will stop by. What if he comes? She asked, meaning Carl, but also every shadow from her past. Then he'll meet his future, Luca said, and was gone. Elena came with groceries and steady eyes. They cooked with the radio low, garlic, tomatoes, pasta thrown into boiling water. Sophia chopped basil, hands surer than yesterday. He's different around you, Elena said quietly, as though remarking on the weather. Careful with that. Sophia pretended not to understand. Different how? Quieter, Elena said. Like he's listening for something. To what? Maybe the first good thing in years. Sophia wanted to push the idea away, but it lodged beneath her ribs. After lunch, she drew again. This time the shape of Luca's hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She kept smudging the lines and starting over until the door beeped and footsteps crossed the marble. He looked tired but unharmed. He dropped his keys in the dish and paused at the sight of her drawing. Heat climbed her neck. It's nothing, she said, flipping the page. Let me see. She hesitated, then turned it around. He studied it longer than she expected, not speaking, a small crease between his brows. You made them look gentle, he said at last. Aren't they? She asked. The crease smoothed. Not usually. He changed the subject by asking her to play the piano again. She tried to refuse. He insisted, and in the end they traded. One song for one story. She played faltering Debussy and told him about the summer her mother taught her all the white keys first, because black looked too serious for a child. He told her how he and his brother used to steal oranges from a market and eat them on the steps, juice running down their arms, certain they were kings. The second song came easier. The second story came harder. How his brother bought him a suit for his first meeting. How the fabric felt like a promise he didn't deserve. I'm not proud of who I am, he said, not looking at her. But I know how to be him. You can learn someone else, she said, almost in a whisper. He shook his head slightly as if refusing grace. Still, that night he slept on the couch across the room instead of in his bed down the hall, as if his body had decided to keep watch near her in a way his mind wouldn't name. The next morning, the calm broke. Dante arrived with news that settled like ash. Internal Affairs is sniffing around your name, he told Luca near the kitchen island, eyes flicking to Sophia in apology. And Caruso's people. 2 cars circling blocks they don't own. Your message to the detective bounced into the wrong ears. Sophia went cold. Caruso? A family that thinks everything soft is leverage, Luca said simply. He reached for his phone, then stopped, looking at Sophia. Pack a small bag. I thought you said, you're safe here until you aren't, he said. And today you aren't. He moved with precise calm, calling for an unmarked car, dropping a note to Elena, palming 2 phones into his pocket. In the guest room, Sophia folded clothes with shaking hands. A thought kept pressing through the fear. The way his gaze had softened when she drew his hands. The way he ate burnt toast. The way he said pack like an apology. They left through the service corridor, down a freight elevator that smelled like oil and dust. The car was plain, dark, forgettable. Dante drove. Luca sat beside her, one hand resting on the center console as if his fingers could keep the world from sliding off the road. The city unfurled, then thinned, warehouses giving way to older streets near the river. When they finally stopped, it was in front of a brick building with a faded sign and nothing else to recommend it. Why here? She asked as Luca unlocked a side door. Because no one looks twice at a place everyone forgot, he said. Inside was a different world. Hushed, cool. A loft with wood beams and soft lamps. 2 rooms and a kitchen that looked used. A stack of records, a wool blanket on the back of a couch, a ceramic bowl that had been mended along a crack with gold glue. Her fingers went to the seam. Kintsugi, he said, noticing. Fixing something with gold so the break becomes part of the design. That's beautiful, she said. He handed her a key on a worn leather fob. If I say run, you don't argue. Will you run with me? She asked before she could stop herself. He didn't answer. He showed her the fire exit and the spare phone and where the first aid kit lived. He cooked eggs badly and pretended they were good. She pretended to believe him. The quiet between them was a kind that felt chosen. Night thickened early along the river. Rain threatened again, then decided to hold. Luca double-checked the window locks. Dante walked a perimeter and didn't like what he found. A car that had passed twice too slowly. A man in a cap who didn't look up when a siren went by. Company, Dante said, stepping inside. Not ours. Luca's body stilled. He looked at Sophia. Back room. Lights off. His voice had shifted, not cruel, not loud. Steel under velvet. She obeyed. Every nerve remembering old drills learned in fear, her body moving before her mind caught up. In the dark she could hear them. Footsteps in the hall outside. A quiet knock that didn't belong to a neighbor. The polite scrape of danger rehearsing patience. Luca opened the door on the second knock, chain still on. Closed, he said. We're not here to shop, a voice replied, low and amused. Mr. Romano, you've been hard to reach. Try harder, Luca said and closed the door. The third knock came with a hand on the frame and a shove. The chain held. The wood complained. Dante was there now. The click of safety off a small weapon, a whisper Sophia felt in her spine. The voice outside was patient. We could talk here, it offered, or in the kind of place where walls tell secrets. Luca didn't raise his voice. You're not invited. Silence stretched, then footsteps retreated. A car door opened and closed. Dante exhaled. They'll be back, he said. I know, Luca replied. He waited a full minute before he went to find her. She was in the back room, sitting on the floor beside the bed, hands pressed flat against the wood like a diver steadying herself underwater. He crouched, not touching, lowering his head to her level. They're gone, he said. For now. She nodded without lifting her hands. I hate this, she whispered. Hiding from the next knock. I know. I thought leaving him would make me brave, but all I ever do is wait. You ran, he said. That was the bravest thing you've ever done. She swallowed. If I stay with you, does the waiting end? He could have lied. He didn't. I can't promise that. Then what can you promise? He looked at her a long time, the blue of his eyes darker in the low light. That when it comes, I'm the one between you and it. Something in her breathing steadied. Something in his finally let go. She reached for his hand on the floor and laced her fingers through his. They sat like that until their legs went numb, and the quiet became less like hiding and more like rest. For 3 days the river building held. They learned each other's ordinary. The way she hummed without realizing when she made tea. The way he stood with his shoulder against a doorframe when he was thinking. How she bit the inside of her cheek when she was choosing between fear and anger. How his temper cooled faster when she touched his wrist. On the second night, she woke from a dream with her heart racing and found him already there in the doorway, one hand on the jamb, like some old story where the guardian never sleeps. She smiled in the dark before she could stop herself. "You look ridiculous," she whispered. "Go back to sleep," he whispered back. But the world never forgets a debt. On the fourth afternoon, while Luca took a call near the window and Dante pretended to read a newspaper he'd already memorized, Sophia's new phone buzzed. An unknown number. She stared at it until it stopped, started to put it down, and it buzzed again. Her thumb hovered, then pressed. "Hello?" A breath. Then Carl's voice, almost gentle. "Sophie." Her chest went ice cold. "Don't call me that." "You sound good," he said. "Healthy. I've been worried." "Don't," she said, forcing her voice not to shake. "I'm not yours." "Everyone belongs to someone," he murmured. "You belong where you're kept safe." She nearly hung up. Then he said, "He can't keep you safe. You don't get to talk about safety." "The thing about men like him," Carl continued as if she hadn't spoken, "is they start fights to prove they can end them. Then people you don't even know bleed. Are you ready to bleed for his pride, Sophia?" She found the right anger. "I already bled for yours, Islands." When he spoke again, the silk was gone. "He won't be there when it matters." "He already is." She ended the call with hands that shook so hard she dropped the phone. Luca was beside her before the phone hit the floor, Dante already at the window. The question in Luca's eyes told her he'd heard enough to know who it was. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have answered." "You can answer anything you want," he said. "You don't ask permission here." "He knows where we are?" "No," Dante said, peering through a slit in the curtain. "But he wants us to think he does." Luca picked up the phone and slid it across the table to her. "If he calls again, you tell him one thing." "What?" "That if the past wants you back," Luca said, voice low, "it has to go through me." The words hung in the air like a promise and a threat. Sophia stared at him, the sound of rain beyond the windows deepening into something steady and relentless. "And if it does?" she whispered. Luca's gaze didn't waver. "Then it won't leave the same." He turned to Dante. "Move the car underground. No patterns, no routines. I want eyes on Monroe's precinct, his favorite bar, his apartment. Nothing noisy. If he makes a wrong move, I want to know before he does." Dante nodded and slipped out the back door without another word. Sophia watched silently, a war inside her heart. Luca had just declared open battle in a world she didn't understand, one she had only read about in headlines. She wanted to tell him to stop, that violence wouldn't fix anything. But when she looked at him, at the calm authority, the careful restraint in every movement, she knew this was his language. Protection to him wasn't a word, it was a vow. He turned back to her and found her standing still, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm fine." "No," he said quietly. "You're not." He stepped closer, slow enough for her to stop him if she wanted. She didn't. His hands came up and rested lightly on her arms, steady and warm. "You don't have to be afraid of me." "I'm not," she lied. He tilted his head. "You're afraid of what I'll do." That she couldn't deny. Her silence was enough of an answer. Luca let his hands fall. "You think I solve everything with blood. But I don't kill men like your husband for sport, Sophia. I make them irrelevant. Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No," he sighed. "But it's the truth." She turned away, staring out the window. The city lights blurred against the glass. "You could walk away," she said. "You could just let it go." "I did that once," he said softly. "And someone I loved died for it." The air thickened between them. Sophia wanted to ask, "Your brother?" but couldn't find the courage. Instead, she whispered, "You're not responsible for everyone." Luca's reply came almost too quiet to hear. "Then who is?" Days passed in uneasy calm. The threats didn't come, but the silence felt like a held breath. Every night, Luca made phone calls from the balcony, his voice a low hum against the sounds of the river and the wind. Every morning, he was already awake, coffee in hand, the news on mute. Sophia tried to reclaim small pieces of normal. She cleaned, cooked, played the piano softly when she thought he wasn't listening. Once she even laughed at one of Dante's dry remarks, and Luca looked up sharply, as if the sound startled him. But the world outside hadn't forgotten her. 3 nights later, Luca left for a meeting. "An hour," he promised. "Lock the door behind me." She nodded, forcing a smile. When the elevator doors closed, the apartment felt too big, too quiet. She made tea, opened the window for air. That's when she heard it, the faint click of the fire escape. Her pulse froze. Another step. Someone was climbing. Sophia's first instinct was to grab the phone, but she remembered Luca's words. "If I say run, you don't argue." She looked around. No Luca, no Dante, no weapons, no time. The window lock twisted silently under a gloved hand. The glass lifted. A man in a ski mask climbed through, landing light as a cat on the hardwood floor. Sophia backed away, breath caught in her throat. "Where is he?" the man demanded. His voice was rough, accented. She didn't answer. He raised a gun. "The boss, Romano, where?" Before she could move, another voice filled the room. Cold, precise, deadly calm. "Behind you," the intruder spun. Luca stood in the doorway, rainwater dripping from his coat, eyes blazing ice blue in the dim light. In his hand was a pistol, but his expression was colder than steel. "Who sent you?" Luca asked. The man's hands trembled. "Caruso. He wants—" The gunshot cut the rest short. Not from Luca. From the man's own gun, fired in panic, bullets slicing the air. Sophia screamed, diving to the floor. Luca moved faster than thought, disarming the man, twisting his wrist until the gun clattered away. In one motion he struck, sending the attacker crashing against the wall. The man groaned, sliding to the floor. Luca didn't look at him. He turned instantly to Sophia, kneeling beside her. "Are you hit?" She shook her head, tears already blurring her vision. "No, I don't—" His hands came up to frame her face. "Look at me," she did. His eyes softened just enough to break the panic. "You're safe," he said. "You're safe, Bella." She didn't even notice he'd called her that. Beautiful in Italian, said like a prayer. When the police sirens began to echo in the distance, Luca stood and gave Dante a brief nod as he entered through the back door. "Clean it up, quietly." Dante glanced at Sophia. "You sure about this, boss?" Luca's gaze didn't leave her. "More sure than I've ever been about anything." That night, Sophia sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Her hands still trembled. Luca stood by the window, silent. Finally, she said, "You killed him." "He would have killed you," he replied evenly. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" She turned to face him, anger sparking through the fear. "That you think this violence is normal. That you think the world bends when you tell it to." He crossed the room slowly. "The world doesn't bend. I make sure it doesn't break." Sophia's voice cracked. "At what cost?" For the first time, he hesitated. The hardness faltered. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. She stared at him, searching for the man who had held her under his coat in the rain. "You think you're saving me, Luca, but you're destroying yourself." He smiled sadly. "Maybe those are the same thing." Before she could answer, he turned away, shoulders tense, fists at his sides. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Then softly she said, "You're not alone anymore." He froze. "I don't need a savior," she whispered. "I need someone who wants to live." When he looked back at her, there was something raw in his expression, something that looked a lot like hope. He walked back slowly and sank to the floor in front of her, his head resting against her knees. "You make it sound so easy," he said. "It's not," she murmured, running a trembling hand through his hair. "But it's possible." And for the first time in years, Luca closed his eyes. Not from exhaustion or defeat, but from the fragile relief of being believed. They left the city before dawn, the sky a washed-out gray over the freeway. Dante drove. Sophia sat in the back seat with a duffel at her feet, staring at the blurred light sliding across the window. Luca rode beside her, silent, one hand braced against the door. No one spoke for miles. When the skyline finally shrank behind them, Sophia whispered, "Where are we going?" "North," Luca said. "A place by the lake. It's quiet." Dante added without looking back, "No cameras, no questions." She nodded, clutching the coat tighter around her. "And then what?" "Then we breathe," Luca said. The cabin waited at the end of a dirt road, half hidden among birches and pines. A small dock reached out over still water. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and old smoke. Luca opened the windows, let the lake wind roll through, then set his gun on the counter and said, "No business here." Sophia walked slowly through the single room. Wood stove, worn sofa, shelves lined with books whose spines had faded. "You come here often?" "Only when I forget who I am," he said. "You forget?" "Not enough." They ate whatever Dante found in the pantry. Canned soup, crackers, instant coffee. And afterward, Luca sent him to the nearest town for supplies. When the car disappeared down the road, quiet settled like dust. Sophia stood on the dock, arms folded, staring at her reflection trembling on the surface. Luca joined her after a while, hands in his pockets. "You don't like silence," he said. "It reminds me I don't know what comes next." "You don't have to." She glanced up at him. "You always sound like you have an answer." "I've had years to practice sounding certain." "Does it work?" He smiled without humor. "Sometimes." A breeze lifted her hair. The scent of pine wrapped around them. She turned back to the lake. "I keep thinking about the night I ran into you," she said. "If I'd gone the other way, you'd still be running," he finished. "And I'd still be standing in the rain wondering what it feels like to be found." The words slipped out before he could stop them. They hung there, fragile and real. She didn't answer, only reached for his hand. He let her take it. Days blurred into a rhythm. They patched the leak in the roof together, cooked badly, laughed once or twice. Sophia drew again. Luca read from old books with pages yellowed at the edges. He started sleeping in the chair near the door, pistol on the table beside him. When she protested, he said, "Habit." One evening she woke from a nightmare. Carl's shadow at the end of a hallway, his voice calling her name, and found Luca already beside the bed. He didn't touch her. He just sat until her breathing slowed. "You ever get tired of saving people?" she asked in the dark. He shook his head. "I only learned how to save one. Your brother. And now you." She reached for his hand, squeezed it. "Maybe it's time you learned to save yourself." By the fourth night, the storm came in from the north, heavy rain drumming on the roof. Dante's text arrived just before the power flickered. Monroe missing, Caruso making moves. Luca read it twice, jaw tight. "We have a window," he said. "They'll be looking for me in the city." "Not here." Sophia sat up. "What are you planning?" "An ending." "No," she said quickly. "Not like that." "I don't intend to die," he said. "But I intend to stop running." "Then let me come with you." He hesitated. "You don't belong in that world." "I didn't belong in his either," she said. "But I survived." He looked at her for a long time. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I'm asking to stop being the thing people protect. I want to stand beside you." Something shifted behind his eyes. "You're stubborn." "So are you." Rain streaked down the glass, thunder rolling like the city's heartbeat echoing across the lake. He finally said, "If you stay by my side, you listen to me, always." She nodded. "Then take me with you." They returned to Chicago 2 days later. The storm had passed, leaving the streets slick and shining. Dante had set up a meeting in a warehouse near the river, a neutral ground. Caruso wanted to negotiate, or so he claimed. Sophia waited in the car while Luca and Dante went inside. The building loomed like a sleeping beast, its windows boarded, graffiti running down the walls. The minutes crawled. Then a single gunshot cracked through the air. Sophia's hand flew to the door handle. Another shot, a shout. She ran before she could think, rain starting again, her shoes splashing through puddles. She pushed through the heavy door just as Luca was backing toward a stack of crates, gun raised. Caruso's men surrounded him, half shadows in the dim light. "Stop!" she shouted. Luca's head whipped toward her. No! The distraction was enough. One of the men lunged, another fired. The sound was deafening. Sophia felt something hot graze her arm, stumbled, fell. Luca turned and returned fire. Precise, brutal. 2 men went down, the rest scattered. When the silence came, it was broken only by the rain leaking through the roof. He was beside her in seconds, pulling her against him. "You're hit?" "It's nothing," she gasped. "Just—" His hands were already checking, gentle but desperate. The bullet had torn her sleeve, left a shallow burn. Relief flashed across his face, then fury. "You shouldn't have come in. You shouldn't have gone in alone," she whispered. He let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob, then pulled her close. "You ruin all my plans." "Good," she said into his chest. They hid the car under an overpass while Dante cleaned the grays and radioed a cleanup crew. Sophia sat with her head on Luca's shoulder, exhaustion pressing down like gravity. "Is it over?" she asked. "Almost." "What happens after almost?" He looked out at the lights shimmering on the river. "After almost, we start over." "You really think we can?" He met her eyes. "I think we already did." Weeks later, headlines whispered of arrests, of deals brokered in back rooms, of a detective resigning quietly from the force. No one mentioned the woman who vanished from his report, or the man who disappeared from the rumor mill. In a small house near the lake, far from the skyline, Sophia painted again. Her canvases were full of light and motion, storms breaking, water rippling, a single figure standing under an umbrella. Luca fixed the roof, burned his old contacts list, learned how to make pasta that didn't come from a box. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that was almost disbelief, as if he couldn't quite accept the peace they'd made. One evening she found him on the porch, sunset bleeding gold across the water. She slipped her arms around his waist and rested her cheek against his back, the same place she had hidden the night they met. He covered her hands with his. "Still hiding?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "Just remembering." He turned, cupped her face, brushed a kiss against her forehead. "We did it backward, didn't we?" "How so?" "Most people fall in love first," he said. "Then they learn to protect each other." She smiled. "We didn't have time for normal." They stood there until the light faded, the lake turning to glass, the sketchbooks scattered beside them. Outside, gulls wheeled above the water, their cries sharp and clean. Sophia leaned against the counter, hair tied up, sleeves rolled past her elbows. Her hands smelled faintly of turpentine. She'd been working since dawn. Across the room, Luca stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with the precision of a man used to handling far more dangerous tools. "Those are almost edible," she teased. He glanced over his shoulder. "That's progress. Big step for a man who used to settle everything with threats." He smirked, set the spatula down, and poured 2 coffees. "Now I negotiate with syrup." She crossed the room and kissed his cheek. "Better weapon." For a moment they were quiet, the kind of quiet that felt earned. The radio murmured an old jazz tune. The lake beyond the window shimmered like polished metal. This house had become their world. No guards, no bulletproof glass, no secrets tucked into briefcases. Just mornings like this, small and ordinary, the kind neither of them had ever believed they'd deserve. Sometimes she still caught a flicker of the old wariness in him. The way his eyes swept the street before he opened the door, the habit of checking the windows twice before bed. But it softened quicker now. The man who once ruled half the city by fear had learned to live without it. "You have paint on your face," he said. She touched her cheek, laughed. "Everywhere, probably." He handed her a napkin. "Galleries coming along?" She nodded. "Opening next month." "It doesn't feel real." "It's real," he said. "You made it that way." When she looked at him, something inside her tightened. The same astonishment she still felt whenever she realized that this was her life. That the same man who had dragged her from darkness had chosen to stay in the light beside her. "And you?" she asked. "What will you do when I'm famous and busy?" He shrugged, a trace of the old grin. "Retire gracefully. Fix the porch. Learn to swim," she laughed. "You in a lake?" "That I need to see." "I can float," he said defensively. "Luca, you can barely relax." He reached across the table, caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her wrist. "I'm learning." Later that afternoon, they drove into town. The small harbor buzzed with weekend noise. Families, markets, the smell of fresh bread. Luca carried the groceries while Sophia stopped to talk to the baker, the bookseller, the kid from the pier who brought her seashells for her art. People greeted her by name. They greeted Luca with polite curiosity. Most knew him as Mr. Romano, the quiet man who fixed things for the church and donated lumber to the new library. No one asked about the past, and he never offered. As they walked back to the car, Sophia slipped her hand into his. "You fit here," she said. "I didn't think I could fit anywhere. You just needed less space to fill." He squeezed her hand. "And you needed more," she smiled. "Guess we balanced out." That night, thunder rolled far out over the water, a summer storm heading east. They sat on the porch with the lights off, the world silvered by lightning. The smell of rain took her back, to that first night, to the city, to the stranger's coat she'd hidden under. She looked at him now and felt the same strange safety. He noticed her staring. "What?" "Just thinking. Dangerous habit. About the first time I saw you." He chuckled softly. "I was hoping you'd forgotten." "Never. You looked impossible." "I was." She turned her head against his shoulder. "And now?" "Now I'm human," he said. "And that's your fault. I'll take the blame." Lightning flared. He caught her chin, kissed her. The rain began, soft and steady, drumming on the roof. They stayed outside, soaked and laughing, until the chill drove them in. Inside, she lit a fire and he poured wine, and the storm moved east, leaving only the hiss of water on the windows and the steady crackle of the flames. Months later, her gallery opened. The collection was called The Distance Between Storms, paintings of rain, of shelter, of the moments when fear and beauty lived in the same breath. The final canvas, placed at the center, showed a woman under a stranger's coat, light spilling around them, the city dissolving into shadow. The signature in the corner read SMR. Luca stood at the back of the room, unnoticed, a suit instead of a leather coat, hands folded behind him. When Sophia finished her speech and the crowd began to mingle, she found him where he always was, near the exit, watching. She reached up, straightened his tie. "Still guarding the door?" she teased. "Old habits." She nodded toward the painting. "Do you like it?" He looked at it for a long moment. "It's the night everything changed. For both of us." He smiled faintly. "You made it beautiful." "It already was," she said. "You just didn't see it yet." On the drive home, the city faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by open road and the first faint stars. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting palm up between them. She slid her fingers into his. "Tell me something true," she said. He thought for a moment. "I used to think love was a weakness. And now? Now I know it's the only thing that makes men like me stop fighting." She smiled at the road ahead. "You're still fighting, though." "Only the ghosts," he said. "Winning?" "Most days." The headlights carved twin paths through the darkness, leading them home. The lake would be waiting. The porch light they never locked. The scent of cedar in the walls. No past knocking at the door. No coats needed for hiding. Only the quiet knowledge that they had both survived the storm. And somewhere deep inside that calm, in the rhythm of tires against asphalt, and the faint hum of her humming beside him, Luca realized he had finally learned what peace felt like. Not the kind bought with fear or control, but the kind earned by choosing to stay. He looked at her, the woman who had once run under his coat and changed everything, and whispered, "Best wrong turn I ever made." She smiled without opening her eyes. "Best shelter I ever found." The road curved toward the lake, the sky opening wide, and together they drove into the kind of dawn that belongs only to people who have already lived through the night.